Cortina d'Ampezzo, high in the Italian Dolomites, is the home of the longest bob run in the world, snaking down the mountainside here for almost 1.25 miles, with 18 bends that are negotiated at speeds up to 75 miles an hour. The last time the World Championships came to this pretty town in 1966, the event was stopped after a fatal crash in the foreman, and the track closed for several years. But now, after new safety modifications, Cortina once again hosts the World Championships. The massive, powerful shape of Hans-Jürgen Gerhardt of East Germany, with his driver Bernhard Germischhausen, and among the 29 bobs here from 16 nations, these are among the favourites for the gold medal. Olympic silver medalists at Lake Placid, and now the leading East German crew after the retirement of Meinhard Nehmer. And Gerhardt aboard very quickly, 5.24, his first 50-metre start time, and that's the quickest that he's done. He was nowhere near as quick as that in practice. And you can see how short and steep this push start here is at Cortina. Germischhausen gets aboard quickly, and there's a decision for the brakemen whether he tries to run the bend or gets aboard early. Waiting for the bob now to come off Verzi, and then into Cento, 180 degrees left-handed. Each collision with the side of the run is costing time, and then later on perhaps only 100. Banging it, he comes out of the labyrinth, off Bandillon, and now two bends of 180 degrees, one after each other. Left-handed, pulling about 4 G-force, and he's very smooth off Cristolau. A 1:13.42 was the quickest time that Germischhausen did in practice. Round the finishing curve, 1:12.57. That's the first time that anybody has got below 1 minute 13 seconds here on the run at Cortina, and this only the second man down in the competition. That's a new track record for Germischhausen. Nervous final twitches from Joseph Bentz, the brakeman for this #1 bob of Switzerland, driven by the Olympic champion Eric Shearer. Shearer just adjusting his goggles, and these two men have been the world champions for the last 3 years. Quiet, determined, both small and powerful. Bentz giving the thrust. Now, will he get aboard early, or will he try to run the bend? Takes it right round the bend. 5.25. I'm picking them up, coming off Verzi, and then into Cento. And then, now through the labyrinth, 4 bends coming very quickly, one after each other. As little contact with the side as possible is what they're looking for, because each touch costs time. And Shearer slipping down here very neatly. He's seen Germischhausen go a few moments ahead of him and set that new track record, 1 minute 12.57. Up until that time, Shearer held the track record. Into the finishing curve. He won't want to stay on that wall too long. 1:12.93. He's not as quick as Germischhausen of East Germany. So Shearer in second place, the defending world champion. And as we thought before this competition began, the chase for the gold medal will be between East Germany and Switzerland. The small, bespectacled figure of Horst Schönau of East Germany, in competition with Germischhausen for the leading East German spot after the retirement of Nehmer. Small, powerful locksmith. Once a tobogganist, this man, who finished 8th in the World Toboggan Championships back in 1973. His brakeman at the back, the big figure, Andreas Kerchner, a 27-year-old army sergeant. Well, Schönau was the world 4-man champion back in 1978. What can he achieve here in the 2-man? Let's look for his first 50-metre time. 5.37, that's the quickest he's done. but not as quick as the quickest today. This is the first of the 180-degree bends as the sun comes over the mountain tops, and that could give somebody problems. Slipping in and out of deep shadow, and then very bright sunlight now. Oh, he got very high in the labyrinth and almost sideways. Body weight increasing to 4 times normal as they slip through those bends. These East German bobs, aerodynamically different from anything else in the competition. Let's look for his finishing time as he comes off the final curve. 1:12.93, not as quick as Germischhausen, and exactly the same time as Eric Shearer, who currently is in second place. So it's East Germany who lead, and Switzerland 1, and now East Germany 2, both with the same time in second place, 1:12.93. Well, it could have been quicker for Schonau because he certainly lost time coming through the labyrinth. Each collision with the wall ricocheting him onto the far side, and he almost gets sideways on. Indeed, if the track had been wider there, the bob would have slipped sideways into Belvedere. With a hat like that, it's got to be Russia at the start, and indeed it is. For the very first time in world competition, the Russians sending 2 crews here to Cortina. Yanis Kippuz and Awaz Schneps. The Russians only been bobbing for about 9 months, although it's strongly rumoured here that they've already built their own bob run somewhere up near Lapland. Indeed, when these Russian crews arrived at Eagles for training just before Christmas, the experts agreed that they couldn't possibly be experiencing their first ever descent. They'd obviously practiced somewhere before they arrived. 5.28, the split time. Both these men are physical training instructors. And you can see now how strongly the sun is beginning to slant through the trees. Still in shadow at this stage. These two had to miss 2 of the 8 practice runs after a crash. They didn't have final practice on Thursday, but said there was never any doubt that they would appear in the competition itself. Pulling up to 4 Gs of pressure, the brakeman. And now perhaps 80 miles an hour down the fastest part of the course. And this tight finishing curve. Oh, and they've gone over. Well, that's what they did in practice. And they paid the price for staying onto that finishing curve too long. It really has to be treated with respect. But at the end of a 1.25 miles of racing down the ice, there's always a danger that the concentration just begins to lapse on that final finishing curve. Well, it's 180 degrees right-handed, and you've got to drive it high and come down cleanly, because if you try to stay on too long, as he does here, you simply drop off like a stone. Shigeto Kubo of Japan, the brakeman. Hiroshi Okachi, the driver. Okachi is a policeman from Sapporo. No troubles off Kristolau. Oh, he came very sharply off 17. Well, what can he do on the finishing bend? Oh, and he's gone as well. Well, that really was the price for getting it wrong on bend 17. Because in bobsleigh, you don't pay for the mistake immediately, you pay on the next bend. Well, the 2 men seem to be all right, and that's important. But once these 2-man sleds go onto their side, there's really little prospect of getting them back onto their runners. Well, both men are clearly all right, although they must be shaken up. And here you can see they're hanging too long on the final curve, and you simply run out of bend and just drop off. But that's the result of the mistake on the bend that came about 100 meters back. Both men in quite sharp contact with the side of the run. And at that stage, trying to make themselves as small as possible and hide inside the cowling. The Union Jack on the front of Great Britain 2. The driver adjusting the goggles, Major Jonathan Woodall, 6 feet 6 inches tall, and his brakeman, Peter Brugani, London-born of Italian parents.
1, 2, 3. No! Push it!
Push, push, push was the shout from the other members of the British team here. 5.41 is his quickest start time for Jonathan Woodall, who was 10th in the Winter Olympic Games at Lake Placid, and now here with his new brakeman, one of the athletes who have been brought into the British team to add strength at the start. Brugani, a member of the Haringey Athletic Club, a decathlete and a long jumper. Jonathan Woodall was disappointed to finish only second in the British Championships a few weeks ago and lose his GB1 spot, and has been very determined in practice to make a point. He's been the quickest of the two British sleds. And if you haven't got your head up as you go through those bends, the G-force denies you the ability to lift it and look where you're going. Through bend 17, Valletta, and then the arrival curve 18. Doesn't quite have the troubles that others have, but got onto two runners. 1:15.48. Well, he's been quicker than that in practice. He did a 1:14.82 in his final practice run here, and Jonathan Woodall will certainly be disappointed. Almost comes to grief. You can clearly see how that bend runs out on the right-hand side. Suddenly it ceases to exist, and the bob drops off onto two runners. Now Great Britain 1, driven by Army Staff Sergeant Malcolm Lloyd. The small, squat figure on the right, a tight head prop for his regiment, and his brakeman Graham Buster Watson. Watson 24, Malcolm Lloyd from the Swansea Valley 34, and it'll be fascinating to see what sort of a start time they get.
1, 2, 3. Yeah!
Well, Buster Watson, the brakeman, has been something of a revelation since he came into the sport in November. 5.29, what a start by the Brits. That's a magnificent start. 5.42 had been their quickest in practice. But the power and strength of this brakeman Watson from Sunbury-on-Thames is really evident. A decathlete is Watson, who has scored 7,600 points in that sport, has now switched to bobbing and is proving to be one of the best brakemen in the business. Well, Malcolm Lloyd looked good on the first few days of practice, was disappointed with his final practice runs, but he's only been down this run here at Cortina 8 times. 45.83, well, that's not a good split time. He was quicker than that during one of his practice runs, so he's lost a bit of time already. Got very, very high on Christolau, slipped off easily. What a difference in the experience of these two. Malcolm Lloyd, the driver, has made over 1,000 bob runs since he began in 1969. Fierce contact with the side, 1 minute 15.56. Well, that's the quickest time that they've done. A 1:15.69 has been their quickest in practice, but they're not as quick as Great Britain 2, driven by Major Jonathan Woodall. This the man they nicknamed the Stuntman, Brent Reshlaw of America, with his brakeman Bob Brell. Rushlaw finished 6th in the two-man Olympic competition at Lake Placid. 5.39, far and away his quickest start time. Rushlaw, the best American driver at Lake Placid, and now with the new brakeman in Bob Brell. You can see that first bend coming up very quickly. Through the second part of the labyrinth, and the third bend coming very quickly after that. Then Belvedere. Bandion. .13.71. That's a good time for the Americans. 1:13.71. It's quicker than Hilterbrand was in Switzerland too, so that will put him into 4th place. So there then the positions after the first runs. It's Bernhard Germischhausen of East Germany who leads, with Horst Schaunau of East Germany in East Germany 2, in joint second place with Eric Shearer of Switzerland, the defending world champion, and perhaps surprisingly, America in 4th place through Brent Rushlaw. Of the British crews, Great Britain 2 are in 15th place, and Great Britain 1 in 18th. Cowboy hats in the background as Brent Rushlaw and Bob Brell prepare for their second run. USA 1 in 4th place with that first run time of 1 minute 13.71 seconds. Did a 50-meter start of 5.39 on the first run.
Yep. 1 and 2 and 3
5.29 on the left is the quickest start so far in the second run. 5.46, so he's slower at this stage, is Rushlaw. Bob Brell at the back in a real crouch as he looks for the power and the thrust to get moving. Rushlaw, nicknamed the stuntman for some of the spectacular runs that he's made, finished 6th in the two-man competition at Lake Placid last year with a different brakeman. Comes from Saranac Lake in New York, and also competed at Innsbruck in 1976 when he was 19th in the two-man competition. That's his split time going into the labyrinth. 45.15 coming out of it, so he's slower than on his first run. Indeed, everybody is slower, and that is certainly the result of the sun, which has now climbed higher and is shining into the run. Quite warm sunshine in several places on the track, although not just there. Oh, and they're in trouble. My goodness me, they got it wrong. Well, it's a long way down to the bottom when the bob's in this position. The safest place to be is inside, and that's one man out, and I think they're both out. Well, that's the worst crash that we've seen. The bob will go all the way. There's one of the crew. It appears to be empty at this stage, the bob. And stopping right in front of our commentary position. Well, now, where are Brent Rushlaw and Bob Brell? There's one of them. Has managed to get to his feet. Well, this is where they have the problems. Now, the line looks good at this stage, but they perhaps try to hang on to that bend too long and have a very fierce contact with the wall on the left-hand side, and that is what gave them the trouble. They hung on the first part of that bend too long, hit the wall, and that knocked the bob sideways and completely out of control. They have a fierce contact with the lip, And that's one of the new safety modifications that have been made since the unfortunate death here in 1966 of Tony Penzberger of West Germany, when the bob actually came out of the run. No doubt at all that that safety lip kept the American bob from flashing out of the run and straight into the trees. Gerhardt, the brakeman, is 26-year-old Army Staff Sergeant. Germischhausen, a physical training instructor, and a very popular man around the bob circuit, something of an extrovert. The Olympic silver medalist behind Eric Shearer at Lake Placid last year. 5.25 is only a 1/100th of a second slower than their push start on the first run. And that's good, because as the day wears on here and the sun gets higher, the track is obviously getting softer and the runs are getting slower. 5.29 on the left was the quickest start before Germischhausen. The aerodynamic shapes of these East German bobs, quite different from anything else. The result of their own technology, and he's slewing quite badly in the labyrinth. 44.85, he's still a bit slower than on his first run, but he's going quicker than the others during this second descent. Although the ice is getting soft, a little film of water now on various parts of the course where the sun is shining on it, obviously slowing the bobs down. Slips through Valletta and then hard and fast into the finishing curve. 1:13.93, well, more than a second slower than his first run, but still the fastest that we've seen in this second descent, for a total time of 2 minutes 26.50 seconds, and that puts Germischhausen back into the lead now, ahead of Hildebrand of Switzerland. Eric Shearer on the right in Switzerland 1 will have heard the times of Germischhausen over the loudspeakers and will know exactly what he's got to do to get into the lead in this World Championship. This small, powerful, and yet quietly determined man from Zurich with his brakeman Joseph Bentz. Well, let's look for the 50-meter start time for the first clue. Germischhausen did 5.25, 5.24. He's 100th quicker at the start as Shearer. Olympic two-man gold medalists from Lake Placid, these two, and the world champions for the last 3 years. Bentz running into the start of the bend, in fact running through it. Well, that's a risk that not many have taken. Through Cento, and now into this classic labyrinth system. It can be so punishing here if anybody makes a mistake. 44.85, exactly the same time at that stage as Germischhausen. Well, he's on course to equal Germischhausen's time. Can he get inside it and take the lead? Very nice line. Oh, classic lines here from Shearer. Slipped just a little. Two runners on the wall of Valletta. 1:13.93 was Germischhausen's time. 1:13.97. He's not as quick. 2 minutes 26.90 for Eric Shearer. So he's in second place. He couldn't get inside Germischhausen of East Germany. Eric Shearer, the defending champion, second at his halfway stage of the competition. The Perspex cowling on the front of the Opel Bob of West Germany 2. Eidenschenk, the driver. Andreas Geiger, the brakeman. In 8th place after the first run. Oof. Well, that will have cost a couple of tenths of seconds. Geiger, a plastics engineer, 100 metres high hurdler, Oh, he's another powerful athlete. West Germans too, bringing athletes into their team to get that extra time on the push start. These bobs that have been developed for almost £500,000 for the West Germans, especially with the Winter Olympics at Lake Placid in mind last year, but they weren't a success there. And they're not a success here either. Well, one's out, and that's a long, long, long way down. Aiden Schenk, the driver, oh, he's lucky. Well, he's come off that wall and he's right in it. Now he's got another problem because he hasn't got a brake man. He's going to go all the way to the bottom, and when he gets to the finish bend, he's going to have to shuffle back into the final position and apply the brakes. Well, now, how good is he at readjusting his position? He's lucky that the bob came back onto four runners. He passes the finish, and he's shuffling back now. That's the brakeman, Andreas Geiger, who's bruised and unhappy, but I'm sure he's glad to be standing on his 2 feet. Well, this is where he has his troubles. It's right at the start of the labyrinth. He stayed on that first left-hand bend too long and has dropped off onto two runners. Immediately across to hit the far side, and the front Perspex visor shatters as they hit that wall. Both men being tossed around inside like rag dolls. Andreas Kerchner, the brakeman on East Germany 2, driven by Horst Schonau. In joint second place after the first run with Shearer of Switzerland. Now Shearer had a push start of 5.24, 5.36, so they're slower, these Germans. Schonau, who's had his best successes in the four-man competitions, was the world champion in 1978 and took a bronze medal in the four-man at Lake Placid last year. These German bobs are never left out long for spectators to admire. They're getting a bit high on that bend. They dropped off. I was about to say that these Germans are not very keen on leaving their bobs out in the sunshine for the crowds to have a look at and examine. They come out for the race and very quickly are put away again afterwards. Very high. And a bit high again. 1:13.93 was Germischhausen's time. 1:14 dead for Horst Schonau. That's not good enough. 2 minutes 26.93 for East Germany 2. He won't make an impression on Shearer in second place. So at the halfway stage of this World Two-Man Championships here in Cortina, it's Bernhard Germischhausen of East Germany who leads. From Eric Shearer of Switzerland, the defending world and Olympic champion, in second place, with Horst Schonau of East Germany third, and Hans Hildebrand in Switzerland 2 in fourth place. News of the British competitors: Major Jonathan Woodall is 12th, and Malcolm Lloyd in Great Britain 1 is 14th. The tall, angular figure of Major Jonathan Woodall, 6 feet 6 inches tall, the driver of Great Britain 2, and his brakeman at the back, Peter Brugani, the son of Italian parents, but born in London, from the Haringey Athletic Club. Yet another of the decathletes who've been brought into the British bobsleigh team to add power.
One, two, three.
In 12th place at the halfway stage, a 5.41 was their best push start, and 5.41 equalled again. Well, you can see Brugani's head's almost down by his knees as he finds that explosion of effort to get the bob moving. 22 years of age. Finished 10th in the two-man competition at Lake Placid last year, Jonathan Woodall. And now with his new brakeman. Slips neatly through the labyrinth. Top left-hand corner, 92 kilometres an hour his speed at that stage. That's about 57, 58 miles an hour. And now picking up more speed. Through the bright sunlight on Cristolau. Drops off the finishing curve on two runners. 1 minute 15.94. The slowest of his three runs, but a total time of 3 minutes 47.13 to put Jonathan Woodall and Peter Brugani into 6th place at this stage. From the Republic of Taiwan, Dien Ching Wu and Huan Lien Yi. Now these two were 26 at the halfway stage. And Huan Lien Yi at the back taking a long time to get adjusted. 5.67. Taiwan, with its population of 17 million, now boasting a bob run on its highest peak, which is at about 4,000 metres. And these two tell us that about 100 young men in their country are very keen on bobbing, and these are the best. Oh, well, that looks as though it's empty. The bob is out of sight at the start of the run here for the first 6 bends when we're looking at the replay of the start, and nobody has got into trouble at that stage so far in the competition. Well, it looks like one man still inside. That'll be the driver Dien Ching Wu. And he'll want to make himself as small as possible. Well, now he's come out. Well, in fact, they were both in it. Because one has come out, and now he's driving it again. But in fact, they're still disqualified because both men have to be in the bob when they cross the finish. That's the brakeman, Huan Lien Yi, who looks to be out cold. Well, both men inside are really taking a fearful battering. And it's at this point that Huan Lien Yi, the brakeman, starts to come out, having clung on as long as he possibly could, but literally having his grip shaken loose, I should think. Huan Lien Yi, the brakeman, being taken away on a stretcher and still appears to be out cold. The gleaming bob of West Germany won, but without the plastic visor that it had on the first two runs yesterday, because the jury here at Cortina have ruled that it was too dangerous after the visor on West Germany 2, an identical bob, shattered in an accident and littered the track with bits of perspex. The driver, Yoshi Hoffman, and the brakeman, Alex Wernsdorfer. These two in 8th place at the halfway stage, but now having to drive without the protection. Oh, he hasn't got in. Oh, my goodness me. What a tragedy that is for Wernsdorfer. Well, that happened in practice to several crews, and now it's happened to the West Germans. It really is a short, steep start here, and the brakeman has got a very important decision. He wants to get the sled moving, but he doesn't want to get it going so fast that he can't keep pace with it, and that's what happens here to Wernsdorfer. Hoffman's got in, he's adjusting, getting hold of the grips inside the cowling that steer the two front runners. Wernsdorfer tries to run it into the bend, and they hit that opposite concrete wall, and that shakes it. Well, it was unfortunate, Wernsdorfer. The very moment when he lifted his feet off the floor to try and get into the bob at the back, they hit the wall, and he lost his balance and his grip, and he's out. Well, that's the end of their competition. Flying helplessly through the air, this 29-year-old teacher from West Germany. Over the wall he goes and into the snow, and away goes Hoffman on his own. And it hasn't been a happy competition for the West Germans. Their number 2 sled out of the competition after crashing yesterday, and now West Germany won, also disqualified. The figure of Eric Shearer, hunched at the front of his bob. The driver of Switzerland won, and the defending world champion. With his bakeman, Joseph Bentz. These two were in second place at the halfway stage, and this is the critical run for Shearer, because if he's going to cut back on the lead that Garmisch-Hausen of East Germany has, he's got to have a fast run here. 5.23, that's his fastest start. So Joseph Bentz, the brakeman at the back, does his part and gets the sled moving at the start. These two, the Olympic two-man gold medalists at Lake Placid, and the world champions for the last 3 years, but here only in silver medal position behind East Germany. Into this classic labyrinth system. It's the second part that has given people trouble. Very, very smooth this by Shearer, this 34-year-old estate broker from Zurich. Quiet, determined, a small, powerful man. Pulling about 4 Gs of force, the body weight increasing 4 times as they go around that bend. 1:03.77. Well, they're the quickest of the day so far. 1:13.59 on the left was the time of Hilterbrand. 1:13.73, so they lost that advantage on the final part of the course. Total time, 3 minutes, 40.63. That puts Shearer into first place. But will he stay there? Well, Garmisch-Hausen of East Germany is the next man to go. Hans-Jürgen Gerhardt and Bernhard Garmisch-Hausen in East Germany won. Olympic silver medalists behind Eric Shearer at Lake Placid, but here at the halfway stage of the competition, the leaders by 0.4 of a second. 5.19, what a good start. These big, powerful men. Gerhardt running into the start of the bend. That's the split time going into the labyrinth. Shearer's time coming out was 44.71. 44.52, so Garmisch-Hausen is quicker. .1:03.61, he's quicker again. In the top right-hand corner, you can see the time. 1:13.55. That's the quickest time of the day by Garmisch-Hausen, and that almost certainly will give him the gold medal.